At 72, Sharon Osbourne is finally breaking her silence about her decades-long marriage to Ozzy, revealing the truths behind the headlines that have followed them for years. What's the real story behind Ozzy's notorious behavior and their turbulent relationship? Join us as we look at Sharon's most honest interview yet, where she finally confirms the rumors. The rise of a rock icon. John Michael Osbourne, known to the world as Ozzy Osbourne, was born on December 3, 1948, in Birmingham, England. He grew up in a working-class family in a small home in the industrial area of Aston. His father, Jack Osbourne, worked night shifts at a car factory, while his mother, Lillian, was a factory worker during the day. With 5 siblings and limited space, life at home was often crowded and tough. Money was tight. And the Osbournes struggled like many families in post-war Britain. From an early age, Ozzy found life difficult. He had a hard time in school because of undiagnosed dyslexia, which made reading and writing very challenging. This caused him a lot of frustration and embarrassment. He was often made fun of by other children, and teachers saw him as a troublemaker rather than someone who needed help. He didn't enjoy school and left at age 15 with no qualifications. With few opportunities, Ozzy drifted into petty crime. He was arrested several times for minor offenses, including theft. At one point, he even served a short sentence in prison for breaking into a clothing store. His father later paid the fine to get him out. These early experiences with the law were a turning point. Ozzy realized that a life of crime wouldn't lead anywhere good. Music became his escape. He was inspired by the Beatles, especially John Lennon, and dreamed of becoming a singer. His first steps into music were rough. He joined and left a few local bands before finding the right group of people. In 1968, Ozzy teamed up with guitarist Tony Iommi, bassist Geezer Butler, and drummer Bill Ward. At first, they called themselves Earth, but they changed the name to Black Sabbath after a horror movie title. They wanted their music to sound dark and heavy, something different from the upbeat pop music of the time. Their music was loud, slow, and full of power. It had heavy guitar riffs, dark lyrics, and a haunting sound. This was something new. It was the beginning of what would become heavy metal music. In 1970, Black Sabbath released their first album, Black Sabbath, and followed it later that year with Paranoid, which included classic songs like War Pigs, Iron Man, and the title track, Paranoid. These albums were a massive success and helped define a new genre of rock. Ozzy's unique voice and spooky stage presence made him a star. Over the next several years, Black Sabbath became one of the biggest rock bands in the world. They released several albums and toured constantly. However, the pressure of fame and the non-stop touring took a toll on the band, especially Ozzy. He began drinking heavily and using drugs. By the late 1970s, things started falling apart. In 1979, Ozzy was fired from Black Sabbath. The official reason was his increasing substance abuse and unreliability. The band felt they could no longer work with him. For Ozzy, it was a low point. He was heartbroken, depressed, and unsure about his future. At one point, he even locked himself in a hotel room for days, drinking and doing drugs. He thought his career was over, but Ozzy's story didn't end there. With the support of his future wife, Sharon, he got back on his feet. Sharon believed in him and helped him form a new band. Together, they began working on a solo album. Ozzy teamed up with talented young guitarist Randy Rhoads, whose classical training and fast playing style brought new energy to Ozzy's music. In 1980, Ozzy released his first solo album, Blizzard of Oz. The album was a huge success and included hits like Crazy Train and Mr. Crowley. Critics and fans were surprised. Ozzy had proven that he could succeed without Black Sabbath. His second album, Diary of a Madman, released in 1981, also did very well. He became known as the Prince of Darkness, a nickname that matched his love of horror themes and his unpredictable dark persona. At the same time, he kept evolving, staying relevant in a changing music world. And just when it seemed like things were back on track, the real madness was only beginning. Fame, family, and the public eye. Ozzy's first marriage was to Thelma Riley, a teacher he met at a nightclub in Birmingham in the early 1970s. They got married in 1971 and had 2 children together, Jessica and Louis. Ozzy also adopted Thelma's son, Elliot, from a previous relationship. However, the marriage was troubled from the start. Ozzy was already drinking heavily and touring constantly with Black Sabbath. He has openly admitted that he was not a good husband or father during that time. He was rarely home, and when he was, his substance abuse made it difficult for the family to function. In later interviews, Ozzy called the marriage a terrible mistake and expressed regret about how distant he had been from his children during those years. Eventually, the couple divorced in 1982. While his first marriage was falling apart, Ozzy met Sharon Osbourne, the daughter of music manager Don Arden. Sharon took over managing Ozzy's solo career after he was fired from Black Sabbath. She believed in his talent and helped him get back on his feet. Their relationship quickly turned romantic. In 1982, Ozzy and Sharon got married. Together, they had 3 children, Amy, Kelly, and Jack. The marriage between Ozzy and Sharon was far from easy. Both of them have spoken about how volatile things could get. Ozzy's drug and alcohol use continued to cause problems, and there were several public arguments and even violent incidents. One of the most serious occurred in 1989 when Ozzy was arrested for attempting to strangle Sharon while under the influence. He was charged and spent time in rehab afterward. Sharon eventually forgave him, and they continued their life together. But the relationship was never quiet or simple. Despite the chaos, the Osbournes stayed together and built a strong partnership. Sharon played a huge role in shaping Ozzy's career, managing his tours, making business decisions, and later becoming a TV personality in her own right. She was tough, smart, and determined to make Ozzy a success, both as a musician and as a brand. The couple's 3 children each had different paths. Amy, the oldest, chose to stay out of the public spotlight. She moved out of the family home at a young age to avoid the cameras. Kelly and Jack, however, became household names thanks to the family's hit reality show, The Osbournes. The show aired on MTV from 2002 to 2005 and gave fans an inside look at the chaotic, funny, and strangely relatable world of the Osbourne family. Ozzy, who was once known as a dangerous, hard-living rock star, was suddenly shown wandering around his messy house, yelling about the dogs, forgetting where he put the remote, and trying to understand his kids. The show became a massive success and helped change the public's view of Ozzy. But for all the laughs and fame, things were far from peaceful, and some of Ozzy's darkest moments were still to come. The animal incidents. When people talk about Ozzy Osbourne's wildest moments, 2 incidents often come up more than anything else: the time he bit the head off a dove and the time he bit the head off a bat. These events shocked the world and made Ozzy a household name far beyond the world of rock music. This incident happened in 1981 during a meeting at the offices of CBS Records in Los Angeles. At the time, Ozzy had just launched his solo career after being fired from Black Sabbath. His first solo album, Blizzard of Oz, was doing well, and his team wanted to make a big impression on the record label executives. Ozzy was known for his strange behavior, so his PR team had come up with a dramatic stunt. The original idea was for Ozzy to release 2 white doves during the meeting as a symbol of peace and new beginnings. It was supposed to show a softer, more thoughtful side of him and mark a fresh start in his music career. But things didn't go as planned. Ozzy, who had been drinking heavily before the meeting, was not in the mood for a peaceful stunt. As the story goes, instead of releasing the doves, he grabbed one and bit its head off, spitting the head onto the floor in front of shocked executives. According to some witnesses, he did it without thinking, and then sat down as if nothing had happened. Others say he did it to get attention or make a statement, though Ozzy himself later admitted he didn't fully remember the moment because he was under the influence of alcohol. The reaction was immediate and intense. People at the meeting were horrified. CBS Records was furious. News of the incident spread quickly, and it became a major media story. Animal rights groups were outraged. Newspapers and magazines ran headlines calling him evil, dangerous, and disgusting. Ozzy's image as the Prince of Darkness was sealed in the public's mind. If the Dove incident shocked the music industry, what happened the next year shocked the entire world. In January 1982, Ozzy was performing a concert in Des Moines, Iowa. The venue was full of excited fans, and Ozzy was putting on one of his usual energetic theatrical shows. People were throwing things on stage, as they often did at rock concerts. Among the items that landed in front of him was a bat. Ozzy later explained that he thought the bat was a rubber toy, the kind fans would sometimes toss onto the stage for fun. To keep up his spooky, over-the-top image, he picked it up and bit its head off in front of the cheering crowd. But the moment he bit down, he realized something was very wrong. The bat was real, and it was not dead. According to Ozzy, the bat twitched in his mouth, and he immediately knew something horrible had happened. After the concert, he was rushed to the hospital, where he was given a series of rabies shots as a precaution. Rabies treatment is painful and lasts several weeks. Ozzy later described it as one of the worst experiences of his life. In the years since, Ozzy has said he deeply regrets both animal incidents. He has explained that he was using a lot of drugs and alcohol during that time and wasn't thinking clearly. He has never repeated anything like it, and in interviews he often looks back on those moments with embarrassment rather than pride. And just when you thought it couldn't get any darker, legal trouble, tragic deaths, and more chaos were just around the corner. The James Jollymore case. In 1985, Ozzy Osbourne's name was pulled into a disturbing criminal case that shocked many people across the United States. It involved a man named James Jollymore, who committed a brutal murder and later claimed that Ozzy's music had influenced his actions. This case led to a lawsuit against Ozzy and raised serious questions about whether music could be blamed for violent behavior. James Jollymore was a 19-year-old man from Massachusetts. In early 1985, he murdered a man named William Savage, a 20-year-old father of one. The killing happened in the victim's home and was violent and unprovoked. After being arrested, Jollymore told authorities that he had been listening to Ozzy Osbourne's music and claimed it had affected his mental state. He specifically mentioned the song "Suicide Solution," which had already been under public scrutiny for its dark lyrics. Jollymore's defense team argued that the themes in Ozzy's music, especially around death and suicide, had influenced him in a negative way. They claimed he was under the psychological influence of the songs, which pushed him into committing the murder. Jollymore's lawyers even went so far as to suggest that there were subliminal messages hidden in Ozzy's music, messages that listeners might not hear consciously, but that could still affect their minds. This was not the first time Ozzy faced these kinds of accusations, but this case was especially serious because it was tied directly to a real act of violence. The case quickly became national news. People were already nervous about heavy metal music at the time. Many parents and politicians believed that the music encouraged violence, drug use, and even Satanism. The Jollymore case gave fuel to those fears. Some groups began pushing for stronger regulation of music lyrics, especially in rock and metal. Others defended Ozzy, saying that blaming music for a murder was unfair and avoided the real issues of mental illness and personal responsibility. Ozzy and his legal team strongly denied that his music had anything to do with the crime. They pointed out that Suicide Solution was not encouraging suicide. It was actually written to warn people about the dangers of alcohol abuse and depression. In interviews, Ozzy said he was heartbroken that someone would even think his music was to blame for such a terrible act. The lawsuit was eventually dismissed. The court found that there was no proof that Ozzy's music had directly caused the murder. There was also no clear evidence of subliminal messages in the songs. Still, the damage to Ozzy's reputation was real. Many people began to see him as more than just a rock star. Some thought he was dangerous or a bad influence on young fans. These kinds of cases also made record labels nervous, and they started to think more carefully about the kind of content artists were putting out. But this wasn't the last time Ozzy would be blamed for tragedy. Another case, even more heartbreaking, was just around the corner. The John McCullum suicide case. In 1984, a heartbreaking tragedy placed Ozzy Osbourne at the center of a major legal and cultural controversy. It involved the suicide of 19-year-old John McCullum, a devoted fan of heavy metal music who was found dead in his bedroom in Indio, California. What made this case stand out was the claim that Ozzy's music, specifically the song Suicide Solution, had played a direct role in the young man's death. John McCullum was described as a quiet teenager who had some emotional struggles. On October the 27th, 1984, he was found by his parents, lying on his bed with a gunshot wound to the head. A cassette player was still running, and Ozzy's song Suicide Solution was reportedly playing when he died. His parents later found a note, though its contents were never fully released to the public. Shortly after the suicide, John's parents filed a lawsuit against Ozzy Osbourne and his record label, CBS Records. They claimed that the song had influenced or even encouraged their son to take his own life. Their lawyer argued that the lyrics of Suicide Solution were dangerous, especially for vulnerable listeners. The lawsuit alleged that the song contained subliminal messages that promoted suicide, and that artists should be held responsible when their work leads to real-world harm. Ozzy and his legal team responded strongly. They explained that Suicide Solution was not promoting suicide at all. In fact, the song was written as a warning against the dangers of alcohol addiction. The title Solution referred to alcohol, not an answer or advice. The song had originally been inspired by the tragic death of AC/DC singer Bon Scott, who died from alcohol poisoning in 1980. The court reviewed the lyrics carefully. There was no evidence of hidden messages, and the judge ruled that the song's meaning was too vague to be considered a direct cause of someone's death. The case was eventually dismissed in 1988, with the court saying that artists have a right to free expression and cannot be held legally responsible for how their work is interpreted by others. While Ozzy won in court, the case had a lasting impact. It sparked a larger debate about freedom of speech in music, especially when it comes to dark or controversial topics. Many musicians and fans believed the lawsuit was an attack on artistic freedom. Others, including parents and mental health advocates, felt that artists had a responsibility to think about how their messages might affect listeners. And even as these lawsuits faded, Ozzy's personal life was about to take another hit, with scandal, heartbreak, and betrayal making headlines once again. The Michelle Pugh Affair. In 2016, Ozzy Osbourne's long and often rocky marriage to Sharon Osbourne faced one of its biggest challenges. The issue this time wasn't drugs, alcohol, or on-stage chaos. It was something more personal and private, an extramarital affair. When news broke that Ozzy had been involved in a relationship with Michelle Pugh, a celebrity hairstylist, it caused a media storm and nearly ended one of rock's most famous marriages. Michelle Pugh was not just a fan or a one-time fling. According to her, she and Ozzy had a serious relationship that lasted for about 4 years. She later said that it was not just about physical attraction, but emotional connection as well. In interviews, she claimed that Ozzy made her feel special and that their relationship had real meaning. Ozzy, on the other hand, admitted to the affair, but gave it a different explanation. He later described his actions as part of an addiction and said he was deeply ashamed of how it affected his family. When Sharon found out about the affair in early 2016, she was devastated. After more than 30 years of marriage, this betrayal was a breaking point. She immediately asked Ozzy to leave their home, and the two separated for a period of time. The media quickly picked up the story. For weeks, news outlets reported on the situation, with headlines about the split appearing everywhere. Sharon, never one to hold back, spoke openly on television about her heartbreak and anger. She admitted that Ozzy had cheated on her before, but this time felt different, more serious, and more painful. Shortly after the affair was exposed, Ozzy entered rehab for sex addiction. This was a term many people weren't familiar with at the time, and it sparked conversations about what sex addiction really is and how it affects people. Ozzy said he recognized he had a problem and wanted to get help. He also publicly apologized to Sharon and to his family, saying he took full responsibility for his actions. Michelle Pugh also spoke out, especially after Sharon made comments about her in the press. Michelle filed a lawsuit against Kelly Osbourne, Ozzy and Sharon's daughter, for cyberbullying after Kelly tweeted Michelle's phone number and accused her of taking advantage of her father. The lawsuit was later dropped, but it showed how deeply the affair had affected the whole family. After a few months of separation, something unexpected happened. Ozzy and Sharon reconciled. In interviews, Sharon said that while she was hurt and angry, she still loved Ozzy and believed in trying to fix their marriage. Ozzy, for his part, said he was committed to changing and to being a better husband. He said the rehab and counseling helped him understand the damage he had caused, and he didn't want to lose the woman who had stood by him for decades. The couple renewed their commitment to each other and started appearing together again in public. In fact, later that year, they celebrated their 35th wedding anniversary, and Ozzy referred to Sharon as his life. The public watched as the couple slowly rebuilt their relationship, with many fans surprised, but also inspired by their decision to stay together. But Ozzy's struggles weren't only personal. His battle with addiction, even after decades in the spotlight, remained one of the most defining and dangerous parts of his life. Drug and alcohol abuse. Ozzy Osbourne's long and public battle with drug and alcohol addiction is one of the most defining parts of his life and career. From the early days of fame with Black Sabbath to his later solo years, Ozzy has struggled with a range of substances, including heroin, cocaine, alcohol, pills, and more. These addictions affected his health, his family, and his career, and even led to life-threatening situations. Over the years, Ozzy has been open about these struggles, often admitting that his substance abuse nearly destroyed everything he cared about. Ozzy's drug use began early, in the 1970s, when he was just rising to fame with Black Sabbath. The music industry at the time was filled with drugs, and Ozzy quickly fell into the lifestyle. He used cocaine and alcohol heavily, often staying up for days at a time while partying or on tour. As his fame grew, so did his drug use. He later began using heroin, which brought even more serious health risks. He often mixed different substances, making his behavior unpredictable and dangerous. The people around Ozzy could clearly see the damage being done. Band members, managers, and even fans witnessed how drugs changed his personality and caused him to miss performances or forget lyrics on stage. Over the years, he had several interventions where family members and friends tried to convince him to get help. Ozzy also went to rehab many times, though not all of those attempts were successful. One of the most disturbing incidents tied to Ozzy's substance abuse happened in 1989, and it almost ended his marriage and his freedom. During a drug and alcohol-fueled breakdown, Ozzy physically attacked Sharon, his wife. In a later interview, Ozzy revealed that he was so intoxicated that he didn't even remember the incident. Sharon recalled the terrifying night when Ozzy, under the influence of a cocktail of substances, tried to strangle her. She managed to escape and called the police. Ozzy was arrested and charged with attempted murder. Sharon pressed charges, and Ozzy spent time in rehab following the arrest. The couple eventually reconciled after the incident, but both have said it was one of the darkest periods of their lives. Ozzy later called it his rock bottom, saying he realized he had truly lost control and could have killed the one person who had always stood by him. Sharon has said that her decision to stay was not easy, but she believed in Ozzy's ability to change and recover. Sharon Osbourne confirms the rumors. Sharon Osbourne has never been shy about the complexities of her marriage to Ozzy Osbourne. In a candid interview with The Mirror, Sharon opened up about her relationship with the Black Sabbath frontman and confirmed many of the rumors that have swirled around them for decades. One of the most revealing moments of Sharon's interview came when she admitted that she knew exactly who Ozzy was before she married him. She said, "I knew what he was before I married him." This statement speaks volumes about Sharon's awareness of Ozzy's struggles and imperfections from the very beginning. Sharon wasn't naive. She knew Ozzy had addiction problems and a tendency toward inappropriate behavior. When they first got together, Sharon had a youthful belief that she could change him. Like many people in relationships, she thought that with love and care, she could help him overcome his issues. She imagined they would have a peaceful life and that his habits would fade away. In the interview, she reflected, "But in my youth, being naive, I thought, I can change Ozzy. He won't drink when he's with me. I'll make him a nice home and nest, and we'll be happy ever after." Another part of the interview that Sharon was very open about was Ozzy's behavior toward women. She confirmed what many people had already assumed, that Ozzy had always been inappropriate with women. Sharon didn't shy away from this truth. And in fact, she shared an example of how his behavior continues to cause tension in their lives. She spoke about a situation involving their nurse, who was described as a large Russian lady. Sharon explained how Ozzy, in his usual unfiltered style, asked her, "Did you breastfeed your kids?" Sharon was quick to react, reminding Ozzy that this kind of behavior was no longer acceptable in today's world. She said, "You cannot say those things now. The world today is different. You cannot talk to a woman like that. You can get into trouble." Ozzy's response, however, showed just how little he understood the implications of his words. He simply asked, "But for what?" His lack of filter, she explained, means that he doesn't always consider how his words may affect others, and he often speaks without thinking about the consequences. This part of the interview shed light on Ozzy's personality and his struggles with boundaries, especially when it comes to his interactions with women. While some people might label it as inappropriate or even offensive, Sharon seemed to suggest that this behavior was part of who Ozzy was. It also raised important questions about personal boundaries, how much of this behavior is intentional, and how much is linked to deeper personality traits, or perhaps even medical conditions like Tourette's syndrome, which Ozzy has been known to have. Sharon also shared a candid moment about their attempt at marriage counseling. In a high-profile marriage like theirs, it might seem like therapy would be an ideal step to heal the wounds. However, it turned out to be a failure after just one session. Sharon explained that Ozzy threw a water bottle at the wall and walked out of the therapy session after only half an hour. This moment was significant because it showed just how difficult it was for Ozzy to confront his issues, even with professional help. If you found this story interesting, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more updates on your favorite celebs. Thanks for watching.